You are now watching Gouche Live, and we are actually live featuring Paul Rosen, my good buddy Rosie, brought to you by those great people at the Hockey News and that other phenomenal magazine called Sports Illustrated.
And Paramount Sports Management.
We are live.
Yep.
I know that for a fact. Hey, listen, we got a great guest. I'll tell you what, this kid used to chase me around. Well, he caught me a lot in Bremerhaven, had a great European career. We'll talk all about that. This guy's Mr. Hockey. So I'm really excited to have Mike Futa on. We'll bring him up in a few minutes. Just wanted to catch up with you. How's everything?
Everything's good. I'm really looking forward to having Mike on. Guy's been around. He's not an old guy. He's been around. Huge part of the Los Angeles Kings organization. Done a lot for the game.
All right, as you know, we're getting ready to hear what's going on with the World Hockey Championships. Maybe we can Mike about that, and also what's going on with the NHL. I know sometimes we may have to be a little bit guarded, but I just heard from Mr. Bettman on a radio interview that it's a work in progress for January 1st. And I'm just doing the numbers. And Gouche is like, you've been with me in Australia when we do these big events. It's the night before when I actually start planning. I don't think they can do that with the National Hockey League.
Yeah, the thing I don't get, Gouche, just the 2nd of December today, correct? The 2nd of December.
Yep.
And the 1st of January is coming up very soon. And if we're going to start, we have to sort of tell the players, training camp, get them ready, what's going on in Canada. I don't know, Gouche. I don't know.
As Futa will tell you, Mikey will tell you.
Did you hear anything? Are they playing that game tonight, that 19 changed game with the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers? Is that game going to try tonight?
Game time decision.
Wow.
Yeah, right now they say it's going to happen. But you know what? It is really confusing out there. So let's bring up somebody that we have a lot of respect for. Look at him in the crowd. That is Mr. Mike Futa. Foots, what's going on? Do we have a nickname?
Foots. It'll work. You're good. I'm Foots. It was Foots. It was Foots. And then when I crossed the border, the U changed. Dean Lombardi threw his mafia touch on it and became Foots. So
Foots,
I answered the
listen, 64 games, 96 goals, 76 assists, 172 points. Where was that at?
Where was that?
Bremerhaven.
Jeez, Bremerhaven. Well, that was.
What's really?
Gerard must have had 172 assists. Then.
I did not look at that one, but we're talking about a classic guy, Paul. Life is crazy. Eh? Here we are now doing this show, and we get guests on. You've had a couple of guests where you kind of think back in the past. Wow, I know him from. And Boots and I, we used to chase each other around the ice in Bremerhaven, freezing. May I add?
If it was snowing, I remember the visiting team warmed up. If it was snowing, it was snowing their end in the warm up.
Yeah.
And the fans were so gassed out of their tree that they didn't feel the cold. So,
but wasn't it just one? Like there was one wall, and then you've been to those type of rinks, Paul, where it came in. We had one February where the water bottle actually froze, and our trainer was smart. He went and got some vodka, just a little bit, and put them in the new water bottle, so the vodka wouldn't. It was crazy times.
Well, one of the craziest experiences I had. I played 10 years. For the Canadian sled team. I was a goalie for the Parrot team, and we had the Deutschland Cup every year in Germany before the Germans got knocked down to the B pool. And in Bremen, Germany, we played one game where there was only one, like the sides were open. And the first period was so sunny that I had to actually put sunglasses on underneath my mask because I couldn't see the puck. It was the craziest thing.
Yeah, there are some incredible stories there. I mean, one of my other than being a complete class act, Gouche, I still remember. You think now about, especially what your foundation is all about, that bucket you wore.
Oh yeah,
your little dress over there. I couldn't believe it. You're a throwback. It was a throwback, that bucket you had on.
I still got it. Yeah. Actually, that's not true. What happened is, they go to the wayside. I had a yellow. No, I didn't have yellow. I had white, red, blue, and black because I played in Greyfrath and I played in Deggendorf, all that sort of stuff. And then in 1997, they came up with a rule you had to have a visor and a CSA approved helmet. So I had to change really quickly. What's amazing about that, I couldn't find any of my buckets when I got back here. So just recently, we did an event last year. I didn't have a Jopa helmet. So I went online and I got one. The guy, I don't know, wanted $400 or something like that for it because they're not cheap. No. You can't get these things.
No.
And he said it was Gretzky's and it was his practice thing. And it was a black one. And I got it with Paul. It's hanging in my office there. I got rooked, but I paid $120. I said, I'd give you $125 right now.
But the crazy thing about that helmet, it basically was like paper mache. There was like nothing to it. Like Michel Goulet is a good buddy of mine, and that was the end of his career when he was with the Blackhawks in Montreal, the old Forum. He slid into the boards behind Patrick Waugh, and his head has never been the same.
When you think about it, it's funny. I mean, the only time I ever wore one was guys used to like to try them in practice. I know James Richmond used to wear one in practice and stuff. It was a little lighter on your head. But when you think about the safety factor, the only time I ever wore one was in ball hockey, which I know you were a big part of ball hockey as well, Gouche. And it's but I mean, and even then I realized I took a slap shot in the head with even the orange ball, and I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah,
this is
absolutely right. Hey, listen, you brought up a great name, JR. He is classic.
Yeah.
He was up with you you were in Denmark.
He brought me, well, James was, it's funny because I have my favorite NHL player, and then my favorite player when he was at Henry Carr was James Richmond. I was in grade 9, and he was the captain of Father Henry Carr, that undefeated team. And then JR became close friends with myself. Actually, at one point, he dated my sister, which was a tough stretch. But he sat there and he said, when things ended, he was in Europe. He'd already started his career in Europe, and he said we'd played summer hockey together, and he was the one that brought me to Denmark with him initially to play in a little town called Gladsaxe. And then things went very well for me there, and it opened up 4.5, 5 more years of playing. So I owed him a lot of gratitude. And long story short, I brought him into Los Angeles a few years back as a skating instructor because he had a really incredible skater. For a guy with
a great skater.
You've seen those legs too. They look like,
oh my God. He's been by a cattle ranch. Somebody stole his cattle.
That's fair to the cattle. But he literally could fly, and he came down and he had about 5 different drills, and he could still skate, a little heavier, but he could just fly. And for me, the happiest moment, I remember showing up at his practice in Georgetown. I snuck in on a flight without telling anybody, and I got to present him with a Stanley Cup ring. And for me, it was probably one of the most emotional days, because if he hadn't taken a shot on me coming to Gladsaxe with him, which really at the time I just finished my teaching degree, so I was looking to just have some fun and get away from town. It kind of opened up some doors for me, and the rest kind of worked out very well. So I owe him that additional opportunity.
So, Paul, sorry, we're talking a little bit about the Europe. We'll get into the North American game right now, but I got a couple other little things. I brought JR, went back home. I was playing in Greyfrath. I got an offer to go to Timmendorf, and they needed some imports. So JR and, oh my God, what's his name? His buddy.
Oh, I know it. The big guy.
Darcy Roy. Darcy Roy. You got it. Darcy Roy, they came to he's huge. So they came and took over my position in my other import, and I went to Timmendorf. So we ended up playing against each other sometime later, and it was the Gouche and JR show. Wow. I had 4, he had 4. We won in overtime.
You guys, it was a clinic. And I mean, when you scored, I mean, it was funny because, I mean, you were a lot more skilled than I was, but when you scored in that league, you scored in bunches. Yeah. It wasn't I remember I had 5 one night and a broken foot and they froze me up with this. And it wasn't because I think they had the goalie from that Russian team that we were talking off screen about in net. So they weren't all beauties, but it was unbelievable that the owner at the time convinced me that my foot, if he froze it, I'd be fine. And I found out after that he was a horse doctor. He wasn't a real doctor. So he froze my foot up, and I was skating around every time I felt my foot just hit the ground because I couldn't feel it at all in my boot. So it was hilarious. But the big story, of course, the German newspaper the next day that I had 5 goals on a gebroken Fuß. So it's good. The war just grows, but it's hilarious over there. Their lack of, I mean, it's got a lot better, but the way they used to look after injuries and stuff was a little bit prehistoric.
Oh, yeah.
I always like going back to the old Maple Leaf Garden story when Harold Ballard owned the Toronto Maple Leaf and he needed a trainer and he didn't have anybody. And Guy Kinnear, the old, you probably remember Guy.
Absolutely.
Guy Kinnear was Ballard's engineer on his boat, and he brought him onto the Leafs. And he goes, "Hey, you want to do some training for it?" And he was the guy that go out and grab the guy's shoulder and the wrong shoulder. Whatever. That's when the nobody really cared. And thankfully now we have the elite of the elite taking care of the players.
No.
Hey, listen, we're going to get into the NHL, OHL right after this. I want to say this to you. We've got Darcy Roy. Anthony's throwing the name out. We know that name. Darcy Roy, this is without a word of a lie. I came down because I played in Great Falls for 3 years. We won a German championship there. James took over. He was a stud. And I came down and I stayed overnight with those two guys. And James was telling me the story about Darcy Roy pulling a fast one on the Zamboni driver. So he got dressed up, like Darcy Roy does, brought a chair, was dressed up in his gear, brought a fishing rod, and was at center ice with his fishing rod. And the Zamboni driver drove up and said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Oh, I'm ice fishing."
Oh, my.
That is Darcy Roy.
No, the stories are endless in Germany, especially with the Zamboni drivers. And you said the support staff, these guys they were into the beers before, after, like the support staff. It was hilarious. So I could just imagine the guy. I'm surprised the guy didn't get a rod and sit down beside him.
Hey, the German doctors are always snapped by the second period, so you wanted to make sure if you got hurt.
Get hurt
in the first period. One day we'll talk about injuries. Unbelievable. Hey, listen, this is breaking news just out of Shoppy, our European correspondent. Hi, guys. In Germany, the first ice hockey game between Mannheim and Berlin was canceled. Berlin players have tested positive for COVID-19. Bremerhaven won against the Dusseldorf today. Do you follow it all?
Yeah, I actually try and keep. I mean, I'm still in touch with Andreas Rosenberg, who was my. He was the guy that ran Bremerhaven at the time. I stopped in about. It would have been in 2013 after our first cup, and I remember bringing my ring and meeting some of my old teammates who went out for beers and stuff. So yeah, I keep in touch. They're in the big rink that was beside the old place that we played now. So and obviously they went up to the top league again. And I talked to them the last couple of weeks. There's a lot of kids over here that have been trying to get temporary spots in Europe with all the games being stopped here, and I've been working hard on that. So no, absolutely. I mean, we owned a team in Berlin with the Kings, so I spent a lot of time over there as well. That was one of our farm systems, so that was an incredibly well run program there. So I've snuck back. I always used to try and, when I was on my trips through Russia and Sweden and Finland and around tournaments, I'd try and find a weekend where I could get in and catch a German game for sure.
Hey, Paul, do you think I can maybe call James Richard? James and I are good buddies. We played on summer hockey and all that sort of stuff. I got some really good stories that we can't talk about on air. Is there any way you think he'd let me wear the Stanley Cup ring? I took him over to Germany.
You should. He should. James, I just remember just seeing him wearing it. I don't really wear that, man. I mean, I still, when I get them on, if you put them on, first of all, they're too big to actually qualify as. I mean, you look like that's just not my style or anything. But you can just find yourself just staring at them, just in disbelief. It's unbelievable. Well, the first one the guys complained about, and it was really nice, but it was done by Tiffany's, which, I mean, I wouldn't have known what Tiffany's was till I got to Los Angeles, but it's obviously an incredible company, and the guys liked them, but they didn't find they were big enough. And then they saw Chicago. We were kind of alternating for about 5 years with Chicago. And then when we won again in 2014, they made sure that there was no screwing around. And this thing came out. It looked like a chandelier on your hand. So I mean, there's no way you can wear it. But it's certainly, as I told the story, I've got 3 beautiful little daughters and only 2 Stanley Cup rings. And one of them thinks they're getting screwed in the will. And win another one to keep them all happy.
Paul, do you have any idea how much those things are worth, Paul? Just take it while we get
I know our ring when we won the Olympics was, probably close to 10. And I think because the year I did with Kevin Shea, the Hockey to Conquer Cancer, I was so excited, had my Olympic gold medal ring from Hockey Canada there. And I was sitting beside Scotty Bowman, and he had Chicago Blackhawks ring. And I felt embarrassed. I wanted to crawl under the table because my ring was sweet. But compared to that Blackhawk ring in third, oh my God, it was
bigger too, Rosen.
He said they were close to 30.
Yeah, our last one was 30 American, and then the Blackhawks won again, and I think Jim McKellar said it was up to 40 their last one.
Yeah,
so
it's right up there. So what you're telling us on that story, Paul, size does matter.
Well, it did at that table, I'll tell you that much.
Hey, you're listening to Gouche Live featuring Paul Rosen. We got our good friend Mike Futa. Foots. Listen, let's get into how you got to be who you are today. Obviously, it took a long time to create your opportunities. Talk about your minor hockey, where you played it, and how you got to where you are today. As far as obviously, you played over in Germany, you came back, you got involved heavily in the OHL, and I know Paul will have a couple questions on that.
Well, from a playing standpoint, it was fun, but it was very modest. I mean, it started out as some fun with James, and then I had a teaching degree, and I always said as long as I was making more in the hockey industry, that I'd keep doing that instead of in playing. And I mean, early that wasn't the case, but by the end of my European career, it was getting better. I dislocated my shoulder, and we'd won a national championship at York, and I decided to get away and enjoy Europe. Dislocated my shoulder my last year in Bremerhaven, and came back, and I was offered. I had a year left of my deal, and I had to have shoulder surgery, and I was offered a position as to run the program at St. Mike's. A former mentor of mine had passed away, Father Ted McLean. He was my principal at Henry Carr, and I had left one of my national championship rings in his casket. And he had left a note that if I ever came back looking for a job in the hockey industry at St. Mike's, that I should be hired. And long story short, I was hired to run their hockey program. Had a great year, fun coaching. It was a lot different than the player coaching stuff that we all toyed with in Europe. And then really quickly, Dennis Mills had come in, and the junior B team turned into an OHL expansion team, and I was hired as the assistant coach there. Very quickly named the head coach. Mark Napier moved up to general manager. So here I was as the youngest head coach in the Ontario Hockey League, coaching the expansion team. And it did not go well. It was a very good learning experience, but we were getting shellacked, and it was something. So we ended up, I got fired about a year and a half into it. I had the Sheldon Keefe and Mike Jefferson, and that'd take another show altogether. But it was quite an interesting crew at the time that added some gray hair to me quite early in my career. But I ended up going hired by the Oshawa Generals, assistant GM, worked in all the under 17, under 20 programs. Had another opportunity to come back as a head coach, and decided that management was something that was a little bit more secure. Went through a great interview process and was hired as the general manager of the Owen Sound Attack at the time, and basically was given carte blanche from the ownership group there to run my own program. It was a lot of fun. I had a lot of contracts still from Europe as far as drafting Europeans, and my first draft pick was Bobby Ryan, who kind of opened the door for us on recruiting American hockey players, and turned into Trevor Lewis. And we had some great players. I mean, I ended up signing Mark Giordano as a free agent as a 19-year-old who's gone on to, just been a phenomenal NHL player. Wayne Simmons I drafted, who's kind of made my story in the National Hockey League. But through it all, Trevor Lewis was an American player that I had signed, and it opened up a door with Dean Lombardi and Ron Hextall coming up because he was an LA draft pick. Right. And the communication lines opened up. Dean Lombardi was impressed that I had found a rule in the CHL that they basically had to rename a rule. And he loved when you could find something that they had to change a rule, that you were doing your homework. As I had plucked Trevor Lewis off a Western Hockey League list when he was left off the list for like 24 hours, and I had signed him to an Ontario Hockey League contract. And anyways, Trevor gets drafted there, and I always said Trevor was my open the window for me, and I was offered the job as director of amateur scouting along with Mark Yannetti. Turned it down initially because I was married at the time, 3 little kids. We had a pretty good Owen Sound. I loved it there. I had a great coach, Mike Stuthers, and we lived on a huge plot of land. And then I kind of thought about it, like, this is an opportunity. I kind of blew some opportunities as a player to get into the National Hockey League, and I just saw a door there, and I didn't want to just open it. I wanted to kick it down. And Dean handed the keys over to the car for me there and said, listen, you rebuilt the culture in Owen Sound. We've got to do the same thing here in Los Angeles. Too many people are coming to Los Angeles because they want to live by the beach. They don't want to win Stanley Cups.
Right.
And it just ended up, it was great. We were a terrible team. We were in last place, and we kind of built it up there. And I was able to, be a part of drafting some really good players that I had insider trading knowledge on, Wayne Simmons being the first one, who nobody even had him on their draft list at the time. And then to build that up and have the success we had, it was just an incredible experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And you did some unbelievable things in LA. I remember that team from being at the bottom of the bottom to slowly, gradually coming up and winning a Stanley Cup, which we'll get into the Cup and how that felt. It's funny you mentioned the name Mike Jefferson. That was those crazy three. We were just talking a couple days ago about Mike Danton when Mike Jefferson changed his name to Mike Danton, and that's another story. Before I ask you a question about the O, and I ask everybody who had a chance to either play or coach in the O, the Q, or the W, were you with Owen Sound when Dan Snyder was a part of Owen Sound?
No, he had passed away. He passed away tragically just as I arrived there. I mean, everybody had famously talked about him being the greatest, not only probably the greatest player at the time in Owen Sound, but the greatest person. Yeah. And it opened up the door. I got to meet the Snyder family, not ever the way I wanted to meet them.
Right.
And Graham and the kids and stuff. And then we did a lot for, to pay honor. We actually, we had the patch that we wore. And it was funny because at the time, John Cherry, who I didn't know, I knew who he was, but he called me and asked me if I could bring Dan Snyder's jersey down with the patch because he wanted to have it on Coach's Corner. And I was like, well, where would you like me to bring it? And he said, well, just bring it to my house, which ended up to me basically having to sleep on Don Cherry's porch because after the 14th beer and just sitting there listening to him tell stories and talk about Dan Snyder. And then the next night on Coach's Corner, he presented Dan Snyder's jersey as part of the presentation. But it was unbelievable.
Yeah, I only asked that because Dan was a big part of our team. Dan's uncle, Jeff, who was Graham's brother, was the coach of the sled team for almost 9 years. And the Owen Sound, Atlanta, and the sled team were the three teams at the funeral in Elmira. No. So I wasn't sure whether you were there.
I was at their funeral, and I remember it well. Jeff and I coached together in the under-17 program. And at the time, I didn't even tie them together with Dan. And then when Jeff was coaching the Kitchener Rangers and stuff, we remained close. And the family, I remember just what wonderful people they were and what a really emotional day that was for so many different organizations, Atlanta, Owen Sound, and again, the sled team.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jeff was probably the best coach I ever had when we shocked the world and won the gold medal in Torino. Beat Norway in Torino. And one of the most incredible things was the morning of the gold medal game, which we had no chance of winning, and we did. Graham came in the dressing room and gave our captain, Todd Nicholson, Dan's wristband that he had on before he passed away. And it was just an incredible thing. We could talk just about the Snyder family entire show. But I wanted to ask you this question about the O. And, this year was the first year, 102 years, Mike, that no Memorial Cup. The hardest trophy, I think, to win. And it was supposed to be in Kelowna. I'm talking about a Rocket, a 20-year-old Rocket player who, now he's done. His career's. What would you say to a player that maybe by no fault of his own, his career is over now?
I would just, first of all, never give up your dream. I think I'm a pretty good example of someone that when they finished playing, and I went to university and I really felt, wow, I kind of, I blew my shot at a scholarship. But if you just don't give up, I mean, just never give up the go. I mean, there's going to be, things are going to get back to normal. I mean, it's terrible. Like I talk to people all the time that are trying to find ways to play, and you think about it, teams that made trades to build for a Memorial Cup run that's not happening, and the assets that they gave up. Like this is just uncharted waters. But you have to, and trust me, I didn't think leading into this pandemic that I was no longer going to be a Los Angeles King. I mean, I was only been a part of one team for 13 years. And when I received the call that my contract wasn't going to be renewed, I was devastated. I was angry. But I felt sorry for myself for about 30 seconds because this is new. This is a pandemic. We've never been a part of it. We've read about stuff like this. So you've just got to find ways to make up for that lost time when things get back to normal, and they will get back to normal. But it's unheard of. Like, we're dying. I mean, I heard, and I don't want to talk too long about it, but it's like you asked the question early there about like, I'm driving in here hearing that this game, like this football game that gets postponed every day, that like they're going to play it, but Baltimore just had to call 14 guys off their practice roster to be able to make the game possible. You know, Denver Broncos got a quarterback that's their fourth wide receiver. So it's uncharted times. I hope they find a way to get an OHL, QHL season. I've got friends, Guy Girard and Jimmy Halton, are coaching out in the Quebec League, and they just get started playing, and then everybody's back in the bubble. I mean, the Ontario Hockey League's not sure how they're going to do it. They're talking every day about the day they want to start, and then somebody's saying they're good, but they're not going to hit. There's going to be no contact, and then it's just, you got to roll with the punches. It's not a good time, but just put your head down and make up for lost time as soon as it comes back. I mean, if this kid clones a 20-year-old, if he's that good of a player, and I'm sure he is, if he's playing as an overage, there's going to be an opportunity for him to continue in the university at some point or play pro, because hockey's going to get back to normal. When I played my first university game, I thought, you know what, I'm going to be a teacher, and I've never spent a day in the classroom. So just follow your dreams. And once the door opens up, I said, kick it down and no more shortcuts, and you'll find a way to get there.
Thanks, Mike.
Very well said. Hey, listen, let's stop talking about Mike. Let's talk about me for a second. Just watch this. Enjoy the show with Foots. Text him and advise him that you were a great ball hockey player with the Winnipeg Grasshoppers and a Canadian Ball Hockey Hall of Famer. Okay, that's about me.
I know that's you.
So then,
my homework.
well, you were going to take credit. Then he says, he adds to it, Foots is actually a Ontario Ball Hockey Hall of Famer. So we got two Ball Hockey Hall of Famers on the show, and really looking forward to meeting up with Mauro. He just loves you, bud, as we do.
I mean, he sent me a note before, and I knew that you'd want to. We had talked before about you winning with the Grasshoppers there in Winnipeg. But the funny parts of that story is, when I am now working in the National Hockey League, and I've got, like, no offense, I mean, I'll call them real Hall of Famers, and I'm not going to take it, but I mean, you've got Wayne Gretzky, okay, we're real, but I have this whole thing, and Ron Hextall, who at the time was being inducted into the Winnipeg Hall of Fame or Brandon Sports Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Somebody sends them the big write-up that I'm a Hall of Famer. And so I just took the biggest ball hockey. Like, we were actually playing at lunch breaks. We'd have real competitive ball hockey games.
Unbelievable.
I found out I was a Hall of Famer, and they had a different helmet made for me to distinguish me from, and there's all NHL guys, Bill Ranford, but I was the only Hall of Famer in the ball hockey game. So they had some fun with it. They're good people. And it was, again, I love the sport. It was the best conditioning thing. I mean, lacrosse was getting too tough on the body, but
yeah, that's right. Yeah. The cross checks from behind.
Ball hockey, you got to the end. It was about as physical as you could get.
So I won't bore you. I won't bore you with all the details of my experience with the Ball Hockey Hall of Fame, but it's Mauro, because he's sending it to me. Him and a guy named Don DiGeronimo, I'm sure you know that name. They phone me, and I'm on the phone, and he said, "You've just been elected to the Canadian Ball Hockey Hall of Fame." And I just met my wife, and I put my hand over my phone. I said, "Who the hell's phoning me and pulling my leg? The Canadian, whose garage is this thing in, right?" So
well, they get me to go. Where is it? I always asked, where's their stuff hanging up?
Well, you know what ended up? They got me to fly out to Montreal. My mother, I'd lost my father. They got I've told this story a couple times. My mother gets this beautiful dress. My wife gets duded up. I go in a penguin suit, and I get to it. It's in a rink. They call me out, and here I am in front of 100, probably 500 ball hockey players, all in their jerseys and their sweatpants, and here I am in a penguin suit with my mother and girlfriend at the time in luxurious dresses. It was the most embarrassing thing in the world. As soon as Mauro and Don heard about that, because they weren't running it, the Montreal Ball Hockey, they called me, and they actually relived it the following year and did it up, and I only wore a suit. And Morrow, that's a class act by Morrow, because they literally had picnic tables with those red and white plastic covers with plastic forks, and it was hot dogs for dinner.
Well, I gave it to Morrow because he sent me the text, but as typos would have it, he, instead of a G, he had typed a D with your name.
I don't think he made a mistake.
And I'm like, holy smokes. I mean, you mean Gouche, don't you?
Yeah.
But
I think he thinks I'm a
those ball hockey stories are awesome. And I knew you'd had the success with that. And I actually had I had a bunch of guys come out and play. We had like Ty Domi on our team. There were some pretty rugged customers that played. So.
How competitive do they get?
Well,
like it's
you're more scared because these guys, you pay your $2 to get in, and then you go to war. And there's guys like dropping the gloves, like basically street fighting. Like Ty Domi just used to pound. He'd get ready for ice train by just killing guys in ball hockey. But the problem is, if it didn't go well, they just wait out. They do it all again in the parking lot, which was a bigger problem. So there was nowhere to hide. That's awesome.
So on the right-hand side, there's some comments. I'm going to bring that up. I'll bring Paul back up here. Paul, sorry about our ball hockey stories now. I didn't realize we've got so much in common. But here, I wanted to read off some stuff in a second on the right-hand side. 95, 96, you played in Bremerhaven for 24 games, 31 goals, 30 assists, 61 points, and you tied with Guy Chouard, who was a phenomenal defense. He was a big, robust guy, so he had 61 points too, and the same amount of games. You were second overall on that team. What I've got to say about Mike Futa, for anybody that never got to see him play, honest. Like, you were an honest player. You did everything you needed to help the team win, number one. You said you weren't as skilled as I was. You were tougher than I was, and you made it known. Like, you played games in both ends of the rinks. The only time you ever hit me was in your end, because I was never in my end.
Well, James Richmond, my first exhibition game, we took a boat to this place and then got off on the bus. And I hit a guy behind that. He said it's the hardest hit he's ever seen since the Wendell Clark on Bruce Bell. And I'm no Wendell Clark, but I didn't know to slow down. And this guy went down, and then they were doing the count, and they had to stop the count because he just didn't get up. It was like the scene from The Longest Yard. They just thought he was dead, and the ref just comes over and says, "You have to leave." And I go, "Well, what's?" And JR is talking to him, and he goes, "You can't hit that hard." So I guess it was like a 5-minute major. I was in this little diddly dressing room showering by myself in my first game, and James just came in and goes, "You just can't hit like that here. Just don't do that. You're going to get charged with murder." But no.
You know what? One day, I think, if you don't mind, Mike, we'll get you, JR, and a couple guys that played over there. Tell some stories where the rats in I think it was Braunschweig, if you remember that city.
Oh, yeah.
There were rats in our dressing room coming through, and it was downstairs in a basement, Paul. Oh. You had to climb. I was tired just getting to the rink because you had to climb these steps. Hey, listen, there's a couple of comments, and then I'll let Paul get into his next question. Sam Trapolino, all the way from Australia, coming in, and thank you for calling me a Douche. Now it's going to be, my nickname's good old Douche.
Morrow's fault. I'll send you the screenshot.
Aaron Kuzak letting us know that 9 people from the Pakistani and cricket touring group, Sam, you'd love this, have landed in New Zealand, and they've had to be quarantined. Thank you for that. How about a question for Mike Futa? We do not talk cricket on this show. Matt Burgess, really good guy. I'm sure you know the name. Great guy. Out of all the players you've coached, mentored over the years, who impressed you the most as a hockey player and as a person?
There's two that just come to mind. Wayne Simmons and Mark Giordano. I think one of the proudest moments, I don't have to talk about. I mean, Wayne wasn't even on the draft list, and I knew him very well. He was played for me in Owen Sound. I had talked him out of a scholarship and given him a commitment. And then I left Owen Sound, and he just was furious with me that I had left him kind of hanging. So I went into Los Angeles. Long story short, I told him that I'd invite him as a free agent, knowing that I had put him at 11th overall on the LA Kings draft list. We ended up drafting him in the second round, much to the chagrin of anybody on the outside that office who we'd done a lot of homework on. And Simmer's gone on to whatever he's in, 950 NHL games. And Giordano, I watched him play AA or single A midget hockey with a guy named Peter Mavroudis when I was going to Owen Sound. And they had already started a recruiting process with Frank Carnevale, who I'm sure you remember the name. And
yeah, absolutely.
Frank was let go from Owen Sound when I got there, and I continued the recruiting process with the Giordano family. So there's two guys that come in relatively unheard of. And I think my proudest one, I won't get into their careers. I mean, Wayne has just rewritten the books for what he's accomplished, and not only in it for his toughness. And then Mark Giordano goes from, he's never been drafted anywhere, still Gouche. He wasn't drafted in the OHL. He wasn't drafted in the NHL. He wins the Norris Trophy last year, and we just bawled our eyes out talking about it. And
how crazy!
So it's a family. When these guys, they still call me all the time, and I call them, and they're like family. So we have late night calls where they get a couple in them and want to share some stuff, and they're at that stage of their career where they want me back involved so we can all win a cup together. But those are probably the best, because when you look at it, it's one thing to see your players, like you're proud when you see Drew Doughty win a Norris Trophy and you've drafted him, or you see your guys raise a Stanley Cup and you do it together. That's just makes your heart warm. But when you see your guys not only succeed on the ice, but last year I said it was the last couple of years, it's either the Mark Messier Trophy or one of the trophies for the best person off the ice and how they conduct themselves in their charity work. And the nominees were Justin Williams, who's become one of my best friends in hockey, and Mark Giordano and Wayne Simmons were the three nominees. And I was just there going, it's just like, wow, not only are they great athletes, but they're even better people. And that's a cliche you hear a lot, but I mean, it's like you, Gouche. I mean that wholeheartedly. You're not only you're a great player, but I know you're a better person than you were a player. And that's the kind of guys these guys are. They are, and there's nothing phony about it.
Thank you for that.
I don't know if you, Gouche, I just sent Gouche a picture there. He's putting it up. So this is how great Wayne Simmons is. As a guy who's disabled, missing my leg, playing for the sled team, I had a chance to be around some incredible hockey players, big name guys, and you learn when you're playing for Canada and the guys treat you different because you're missing your leg, you're in a wheelchair, even though you're playing for the same Canada. And I had a chance in 2015 to do the to hand the relay to the Pan American Games. And Wayne and myself were the two hockey players, him from Hockey Canada as an able-bodied, me as a sled guy. Wayne treated me so equal. We handed the torch to each other, and that's why I showed that picture there, because he was forget about the fact of a great player. What an incredible person to treat somebody who is supposed to be treated the same, but to actually do it, because a lot of guys don't do it. I'll never forget that. That's why you said Wayne. I found that picture. Yeah,
he's an awesome guy. Hey, what is good old Keels Day Loop? Anthony's putting that up there. Any idea what that means? That was our ball hockey. That was where all the top ball hockey tier 1 teams, the Top Guns and all the Maple Precast Eagles, Fernview Rangers. That's where we played all our games out of. So
Fernview Rangers.
Yeah, Fernview Rangers. Danny Rinaldi, tell me if I didn't mention that. But that was it. That's where we paid money to go in and kill each other.
Hey guys, we are talking to Mike Futa, a player, coach, GM, Europe, OHL, NHL, AHL. You were director of personnel, VP of hockey operations, the National Hockey League. Man, you've done it all. One question I've got, and then Paul, I know you want to ask, there's a question on the right-hand side. Is it true that you won a 50-50 in Edmonton?
Oh, and it was funny timing-wise, and it's not funny because I got divorced, but just after my divorce. And again, I'm not.
My buddy, hang on before you tell a story. The only reason why I know it is Lyle Best gave you the check or gave you that. Okay.
Well, you would have laughed because I didn't know. It's a quick story. I fly in a day early to watch the World Juniors, and Canada's just beating the tar out of the Czech Republic. And I'm looking up at the thing, and I keep seeing. I've never seen a 50-50 draw that's at like. It's at like $87,000.
Yeah.
And this, I go down, I've never done it before, and I've never done it again. I go down, and the one place is sold out, and then I see this lady going by, and I buy one ticket from her. She only has one left. I go back and sit down, and I'm watching this. And I've got none of my scouts are there, so I've got like 8 empty seats beside me. And then they announce it, and this was a bad hockey game. And they announce it, so it goes up, and I check, and my heart literally. You know when you see something, it's just you don't think you read it, so it's still up there, and I'm not even paying attention. I don't even pay attention to it. But this time it flashes off again. This time I write it down because it looked way too familiar to my ticket. And I look down and I'm like, oh my god! And so now I can't see that there's hockey on the ice because I'm leaking like the pilot from Airplane, thinking, I won. I think I won. And then I look up thinking it's 50-50 that maybe I think I might have just won $47,000. And I have to stop a police officer coming down. I go, sir, could you just do me a favor? Because I'm a little numb right now. Can you have a look at this? And he goes, you won. You won. It's you. And I'm like, okay, so now here I am. I've got like a bag. They've given us like a little scouts kit with a bottle of, I know it was a bad bottle of Wayne Gretzky wine. And I've got all our tickets for the whole staff for the rest of the World Juniors. And we had a rule with Dean Lombardi, you're never allowed to leave the game early. And I'm walking down the stairs, and I remember Brad Treliving, who's with Arizona, Futa's leaving the game early. Tell Lombardi he's leaving the game early. And I'm like, I can't speak. I go down. Within seconds, they've given me a check for $87,500 tax-free dollars. And I'm like dropping F-bombs. I'm like, get the F out of here. Give me that. And I'm asking legal questions like, does my wife get any of this? But they said you have to give your name, and so I'm like going to give them a name like Kaiser Soze. I go, I don't want to give a real name here because I'm supposed to be working, and they got to give a real name, so I don't give a real. So it's like the Naked Gun. All of a sudden, I'm leaving. I forget my tickets because I'm still numb. So all the tickets for the entire LA staff there, I have to go back and get that. I go up, and they're announcing Mike Futa from Mississauga, Ontario, won $86,000. So now Gord Miller, who I know, is now announcing it across Canada because it's a boring 20-1 for Canada. And he's like, Mike Futa, who's just here, has just won $86,000 while scouting for the Los Angeles Kings. So now my phone, literally, I look down and I'm at about 600 missed texts because everyone watched Canada, and about 30 of them are from my ex-wife. So,
oh gosh, yeah.
Anyways, long story short, I took the staff out for dinner. I gave every one of our staff members a grand, and it was alimony proof. So it was a nice little ticket. I had and it's 87. So it became, of course, the next day, Scout wins $87,000 while working. And I was in the cab. I remember being in a cab on the way back, and they were announcing it on the radio. And the cab driver was livid, screaming out, "Can you imagine some horse's ass? Here I am busting my guy in a cab, making no money, and some guy who probably is already making a lot of money wins $87,000." And I'm like, just in the back, like, oh my God, do I say something? And I got up and I gave this guy $100 bill and a $20 bill. Oh, sir, what are you doing? I go, I'm that horse's ass. Just $87,000.
Well, it's funny. It's funny that I was doing an event in Edmonton, and Lyle Best, a very good friend of mine, he said, hey, Gouche, I realized you know this Mike Futa dude. And he told me the story, and he went and checked it. You had asked him, does my wife get it? And
I was like, all the wrong questions.
But he actually went and found out
right away. I'm getting legal advice while I'm supposed to be talking.
Wow.
Unbelievable. Hey, Paul, I know you wanted to.
And then, of course, Ron Hextall texts me and tells me that it's a lot. I was working for the LA Kings, and I have to give the money back to the organization, which was another thanks for thanks. Actually, had a great sense of humor, but no, it was all good.
Yeah.
All right. No, we've had a lot of time with Mike Futa here. Listen, I know we want to get into your NHL stories. I know Paul has a question on that.
Yeah. So my last question for you, Mike, and thanks for that and all the great stories. And we could probably speak for hours. And Ronnie Hextall, my actual favorite. I loved the way Hex played the game, stopped the puck, and also if you came around him, you paid the price. I loved that. I wanted to ask you, going back to when you're growing up, Canadian, you love the game, and then. All of a sudden, hard work, and it all pays off, and you're holding the Stanley Cup. Bring us to that moment, what it was like holding that Stanley Cup. Look at that, beautiful. Holding that cup and knowing all my hard work paid off.
Numbing, Rosie, like numbing. Like you think about, and I've told this story the other day because I remembered, you think about everything because we literally, and it wasn't easy, but that year in 2012, we almost missed the playoffs. We hired Daryl Sutter, and we made the playoffs like 2 games left in the season. We made the playoffs as the 8th seed.
Yeah.
And we knew we were playing Vancouver, who we really played them hard. But we went into that we had played playoff games for the whole month, right? Because we had to just to get in. and you could see the team coming together, and Jonathan Quick was starting to stand on his head, and we had like 9 captains in that locker room, and now Daryl Sutter just had them pointed in the right direction. So that year we went up in every series 3-0. So it was really straight. It wasn't that it was easy, because every game was a battle, but you were never in any sense of being in an elimination process, right? So here we are. I think we're starting the Stanley Cup Finals against New Jersey, and I think we'd only played 14 games. Like, we had 12 wins, but I think we'd only played 14 games. It was unbelievable. So, and then in the last game against Jersey, started to mount a comeback against us, and we got to 3-2, and we were back at Staples Center, and we were up 5-0 after the first period. Can't remember. His name should rebound. Somebody hit. Hit our guy from behind, and the 5-minute major. And our power play was horrendous throughout. That was one thing to go through it all throughout the playoffs. Yeah. And 5-minute major, I think we scored four power play goals. Matt Green, and it was like, of course, Bernie Nichols, who was supposed to be in charge of our power play, was taking credit for the fact it was about 1% going into the game. But he's another story. But so
that's Bernie.
You're literally sitting there for 40 minutes with a lead that you know you're not gonna lose. Yeah. It was Rob Scuderia that got hit from behind, by the way.
Right.
And so he comes out and he looks like Jason from Friday the 13th. He's got the zippers all down his face, and you just think what these guys are going through to win it. But for 40 minutes, you're looking at that clock, and it felt like 18 hours because now you're like, I'm going to get a day with the cup. I'm going to get my name at the cup. God, I wish my kids were here. God, I wish my parents were here. You think about Bremerhaven, you think about every step along the way, the people that you're alive in, and you're thinking about the party, and then all of a sudden you're getting on, and you're still not sure. Then I started thinking, am I going to be able to pick this up? I still have a bad shoulder. I'm going to be the first guy in history to pick the cup up, and it's going to be too heavy. Yeah. You got so many things in your mind, and then when they hand it to you, it's like a feather. I could have thrown it into the top row, and then you're in tears, you're emotional, and then you celebrate, and then you have an incredible day with it, which I could tell another. I spent way more money than I could ever have imagined, and then because you're wondering, this is never going to happen again. And from where I was 10 years ago, how could I have imagined, or before I got to the Los Angeles Kings, that this day was ever going to come?
Yeah, true.
And then all of a sudden, you're sitting there. 2 years later, we go to the conference finals in 2013, and now we're sitting there with a team that's expected to win. Right. And we go the exact opposite route, where we go 3 Game 7s on the road and win all 3 to get there again. And then by the time we got there, we were so battle worn. Yeah. He was it was like there was a different hero every night. I mean, Justin Williams ended up winning the Conn Smythe that year, but he just had all the big goals. Alec Martinez scores in double overtime. And then you're like, it was different because you had no idea it was going to happen. You're in double overtime. If we don't score that goal, we're going back to New York for Game 7 or whatever it's at. And now you're like, okay, we're into one. So your heart is just in your throat. And then Marty scores, and it's just, it's beyond different. You're hugging everybody in the box. You're getting escorted down to the ice. You're running onto the ice. You're seeing all these guys now. There's more of it, like an OHL All-Star team. I got Tyler Toffoli, Tanner Pearson, like all my guys that I've been through this for. Now we're celebrating, and their parents are on the ice. Like, we've known each other since we're 14 years old. So surreal. Yeah.
Well, I'm a massive Blackhawk fan going back to the 60s. And despite the fact that the Hawks won their 3 cups, and I was pretty happy when Martinez scored that in double OT in Game 7, I wanted to jump off the bridge.
I think that was, well, first of all, that was, Rosie, that was the best live hockey game I've ever been at. Yeah. I think people have said, too, that have voted on the best game. And I mean, there's the best moments in hockey history that everybody has their own, and they're all obviously like Paul Henderson stuff. But as far as a playoff game, that was the best live hockey game that I've ever seen, that Chicago game. And it was for me because finally being in Chicago and understanding the true what it's like it's the best home noise you're ever going to feel. Like it was like you couldn't even hear. Like you couldn't hear the entire game. And then when that puck fluttered in, Dean Lombardi and I just looked at each other, and it was like a movie because it was like silence. Yeah. All of a sudden, when people realized it was in, and it wasn't like if there was another 20 seconds, I bet you Chicago would have tied it up, but it was over. And everybody you could tell everybody just looked like, that's over. It's over. And then you have your eruption and you get down to the room. But I was a little worried that our guys were going to be able to come back after that because it was such a
high.
Yeah. And then we came out thinking, we got a couple early, overtime, or like Justin Williams scored a late one that really sucked the life out of the Rangers early. And then it was like, once it got to the end, like it was, you could tell we weren't going to be denied. Jonathan Quick was in his zone, and we had too many guys playing their A game, and we knew how to win. Yeah, at that point, like Chicago knew how to win, but we at that point knew how to win, and Daryl Sutter kind of pushed us over the finish line there. Yeah.
Though you didn't win the Stanley Cup as a player, just think about, Paul, those feelings of us being on and playing road hockey, scoring that winning goal for the Stanley Cup. You've won 2, obviously, as management. What a compliment, buddy. From coming where you were, think about you playing at Bremerhaven, and here you are winning 2 Stanley Cups in LA. And that's no disrespect to Bremerhaven.
No, but that's what I mean. That's why when you talk about the 20-year-old in Kelowna, what do you tell them? I was a 26-year-old playing, and we weren't even in the elite league at that time, and it was Division I. And your team was up. We'd only play you guys at the end, even with your grade. We were playing Division I in Germany as an import. It didn't mean, when we won the Danish championship. I go back and look at that. I'm pretty sure how I felt when they were giving me my gold helmet. It probably felt pretty good in Denmark. I know I felt good. I know it felt like you're jumping in your teammates. I don't know how you can not bottle that feeling when you're a champion at any level, whether it was with the Grasshoppers or Maple Precast, but there's something about when they bring that cup on the ice, and when you've grown up seeing it from a distance, and all of a sudden, Phil by his first name, the guy with the white gloves, you always thought would just know from a commercial, and you know the keepers from the guys that have been your day with the cup. Yeah, it's surreal. And I was so happy with the second cup because my dad was overseas for the first one, but my mom and dad were there for the second one. So, and unfortunately, my angels, I call them, they've had their 2 days with the cup where you showed the wonderful picture. And they got to experience something that we'll always remember as a family. And I hope there are more to come. They enjoy them as older young ladies. Yeah. But to have that moment with my parents on the ice where I'm holding the cup above my head and my mom is, I've got pictures with my mom on the ice, and then have my parents and I know how hard it was. Gouche, I've followed your personal history and your losses too recently.
Oh, thank you.
You can't put into words what that's like to be able to look at the people that really believed in you through everything. I mean, I always thought my dad was a real prick when it came to me as a hockey player, but everything he did was just to push me to be better. I mean, he didn't live through me, he lived for me. And he probably hardened me to get to the point that I could, my mom never hardened anything. She was the soft voice, the car you wanted to do on the ride home when you didn't want to get it from your dad in the other car. But to be able to share it both with them because they were so much a part of it. Yeah. And then it was amazing. And then I always tell the story because my dad, he's a tad stubborn. He's still in incredible shape. But here we are getting on the float for the parade to go through. They used to call it the Laker parade. And there's everything. Like they've got all these coolers filled with beer. And here we are just about to start. There's ticker tape going off. And my dad, I remember reaching in to get him a beer, and the beer wasn't cold. And we're about to start a Stanley Cup parade, and he's complaining that the beer's so he always tells a story about the horse and the horse crap, which you can always find. So my dad found some horse crap even while we were about to get there to the Stanley Cup parade. But it was a phenomenal feeling. And then to bring them all together, I've got pictures of my daughters and my mom and dad and the Stanley Cup and my sister Lori, and it's beyond words. Beyond words.
Listen, I have to say, I follow you on Facebook. It's the one thing that I know how to do. And I love my parents dearly, but you have such a connection with your parents. It's crazy. And you should be proud of that. Because a lot of guys, he's mommy's boy, or man, that love you have for your parents. And I just want to show this picture one more time. Look at the beauty. You take such good care of your daughters. I got nothing but respect for you, bud. I love watching it. Oh my God!
There's number 2.
Gorgeous.
That was your idea to hold up 2 fingers. So yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. When you go through adversity, like obviously that wasn't a big plan to not be married, but it's your job to make sure that those girls' lives are taken to another level. And
That's crazy.
Even like times like this, I mean, the people I've met, there's this little girl, Amazing Grace, that passed away. I met her through Justin Williams, and she passed away at like 12 years old, Grace Bowen. And she was like my guardian angel. And I mean, I ended up giving her this little necklace that she was buried with. And it was the hardest. Justin Williams asked me to deliver the eulogy in Coburg for him, which I did, along with Haley Wickenheiser. When I met her, that was just another incredible moment in my life. But I truly think when I start to feel sorry about, geez, LA screwed me, or that sucked, I think about her, right? And I think about the fact that it's allowed me, because if anybody says I'm a mama's boy, that's the biggest compliment they could give me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think my mom's the best human being in the world.
Absolutely.
So compliment. So, and if somebody says, you're just like your dad, I used to think that was a bit of a shot. I couldn't be prouder. I couldn't be more proud to be just like my dad. So those kind of things. And I think the one thing, it hasn't been as much lately because I've been doing a lot of Zoom stuff and trying to get myself ready to get back into some opportunities moving forward here. So I've been staying in King City more than Midland, but this was a chance for us to spend incredible and still moving forward some incredible time with my mom and dad and with my girls during a tough time, because over the past years, it's only been like, my dad, it's like Christmas, right? You come in, you do your 4 days, and then you go to World Juniors, and that's the only time you get to see them. So this has been a bit of a blessing, spending some quality time with them.
Well, that's fantastic. Listen, it's late in the hour. We've got Pete Bombacci coming up. It's Wellness Wednesday. We're going to be chatting with him about, obviously, how are we going to get through the holidays, not being able to be connected. Really looking forward to that. You've been talking with Mike Futa on Gouche Live featuring Paul Rosen. Just as we let you go, there's a couple of comments here I'd love to get a couple of comments on. I love the enforcer's role in hockey. Please tell me Keith Westgarth's story. Do you know?
Kevin Westgarth, Chatham, Ontario. Westy's actually he's an Ivy League grad. Dave Torrey coached him in Chatham, and he went to the college route, which is, this game is certainly not built for the college route. He was an absolute terror in Chatham. He was one of the toughest guys in the industry. He came down and he kind of pounded everybody in the American League he got in. He ended up. He was on our roster for our first cup, and Westy, he had this thing. After each fight, he had this big long hair that used to drape over him like the Undertaker. Then he'd throw his hair back. I mean, one night even it was either John Scott or someone filled him in, and he was covered in blood, and he was still doing his little dance after the fight. And I'm like, it's not a good time. But he was just one of the toughest to do that role. Especially, it's amazing how many Ivy Leaguers do that role. Like. Big George, who's now he work. I think I see Westy. He's working in the league office, I believe. So along with who's the big guy, big mustache, played.
Oh yeah.
Georgie.
Peros.
Well, these guys, it's amazing. All these Ivy Leaguers that come out, they must really get angry at all the studying they had to do, because they come out and they're incredible fighters. So, it's
hey, thanks, Pete. Pete just let us know who it was. You guys already knew it.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good stuff. He was a great player, and he's got a Stanley Cup ring for sure.
As we wrap up here, final question. You talked to us about, you took a big hit, knocked this guy into oblivion. Our good friend, who's actually in a hospital right now in Australia, he had some issues with an eye. So he's just saying, hey, laying here on a fair amount of pain, but goodness, we're keeping him in stitches. His question, and it's the last question for you, bud. Who's the hardest guy that hit you? And leave me out of it, because I tripped. It was a trip, me falling India. I was not trying to hit you.
Well, I think it was Mike Maurice, and it was I know the story. I mean, and it's crazy how many times you go back, and clearly I had a concussion, but I didn't, that was the whole thing. My dad never stay down, and coach never show him you're hurt. So it was at the national championships playing for York University, and I was to the side of the net, digging away for a loose puck, and he must have come from. And the one thing about Mike Maurice was he was built like you're supposed to be built. He would have been probably a cut professional wrestler. He was just ripped. So it's probably not the guy you want to get hit. So I'm digging. And I guess he came all the way through in the back check. And he hit me so hard. And it was on the time. It's at TSN. I've seen it. And I don't remember it. But I went from the goal line head first into the end boards.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm down. I'm down. but I know I've got to get up because the whistle hasn't blown. So I remember getting up and just holding onto the glass. And I went, if I follow the glass all the way around, I'm eventually going to get to a bench, right? So I was pretty much in the, who's the little guy that got Kapanen, who got hit by Darcy Tucker? He had to follow. So I followed. It was like following your chicken all the way, get back to the bench. Just turn left at our gate because I knew I had enough to see that we were red. The York University sweaters went down the hallways and just collapsed. So I'm just lying there, and I couldn't. Of course, the same thing probably was Guy Kinnear looking after me. I'm getting asked, like, do you remember where we're playing? And I'm like, oh yeah, we're playing Laurier. It's the national championships, and all of a sudden I remember Graham Wise. Somebody took a penalty, and he didn't know how bad I was. So all I hear is, Futa, you're going, penalty kill. So somehow I got up, go over the boards, skate down to now we got an offensive zone faceoff, and I still remember watching this on the TSN after. Is I lined up and I look like I've used a lot of analogies, but I don't know. The guy that in the longest yard, the guy that gets hit so hard the first time, but he's still.
Yeah.
I know I've got to go in hockey position in the defensive zone faceoff. The puck gets dropped. I still haven't moved, so everybody's moving around. And then finally, everything just gives out on me, and I do a full Bambi. The puck gets thrown to my man, and Mark Applewhite makes a save that's the reason he was the best goalie in Canada. Yeah. They picked me up and put me back in the bench, and that was in the second period. I ended up playing the third period. I have no idea. And I remember that night when we were having our beers after winning the national championship, realizing 3 days later that I still thought I had a hangover from the celebration, and it was the cut that I'd gone through. So I think that would be the hardest I've been hit. I got a couple ball hockey fights, didn't go the way I wanted them. those ones were self-inflicted wounds, because if you're stupid enough to fight in a sport that you had to pay to get in the building, you deserve to get.
Absolutely.
That was unbelievable, Gouche. That's the one I remember because it was documented, and I knew for a fact it was a complete concussion, and it was a tough one. But I hope your friend feels better, and I hope we had him in stitches. But most of the hardest hits, as you would attest to, you don't remember.
That's right. They're carrying you.
Remember them. There were too many of them.
Hey, listen, Mike, we can't thank you enough for taking. We got to get you back on, because I think we only scratched the surface. So maybe in a couple of weeks or a week from now, maybe you could come back on. Maybe we'll get James. We'll get James on with you. Final word from you, Rosie.
No, I just love it. Anytime we get a chance to talk hockey and talk about things that the average fan wouldn't know about, what it's like for somebody in management who's worked so hard to hold a Stanley Cup, what it's like for you to be there with your kids. And, it's not just a cut and dry sport. There's so many things that happen that are just incredible and people want to hear. So thanks a lot, Mike.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Anthony, to leave you go. Anthony's asking the question: was that a weak pass from Bones?
Oh, Kevin Bonnell. First of all, like you would say, Gouche, this happened in the offensive zone. Yeah, so Bones would have been there. Kevin Bonnell probably wouldn't have been. Well, Luch Fagioli wouldn't have been there. That was our line. But no, it was not Kevin Bonnell's fault at all.
All right, you've been with Mike Futa, two-time Stanley Cup champion with the LA Kings. Unbelievable character. You are Mr. Hockey to us, so thank you for taking time with us. And you know what? We'll be getting you on the next couple of weeks. I'll talk to JR, and we can tell some stories about the real.
Yeah, I'll tell him. We'll tell him to bring. I'll go buy. My mom's got my all my jewelry, so I'll try and bring my ring, so at least you can see what one of these things looks like. Because that would
be fantastic. Mike Futa, thank you so much. Great to talk with you, kid.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Mike. Take care.
Thank you.
Honest worker. Guy was nails. Like, he could play. This kid could play. Hey, listen, sorry, Paul. I know we've got Pete Pombacci in the back. We want to do our Wellness Wednesday. He had an incredible post on. We'll show it in a sec. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Pete Pombacci.
Where'd the stash go, Peter?
Oh, yeah.
It's gone. Rosie, it's gone, man. You
I
knew I was going to be back down to the wood.
I know.
You look good.
And we never had a chance.
Thanks.
I know you called me the next day, and I was busy, and we still haven't had a chance. One day's turned into 7, and we haven't had a chance to talk.
Well, and I shared something, and I'm not sure if we have it to.
I'm bringing it up, but I wanted to do this before. Our buddy Rob Fritz saying, "You look better, Rosie, in a Rum DMC hoodie than Gouche sharp blazer. Great show, guys. Thanks." Well, that's not right.
And it's indeed, it's not Run DMC, but that's okay. Thanks, Fritter.
Oh my God, that's I don't know
Tough
if I
crowd.
can. I know it's crazy. Listen, I need to. I downloaded it. It's not up here, so you guys can have a little chat. And I will.
I actually, and hopefully Gouche will do it. When I sent Gouche a picture of me and Wayne Simmons when Mike Futa was talking about it, and Wayne, we handed the torch to each other on Queen Street when the Pan American Games was going through. I love when players, able-bodied players, treat the disabled player exactly the same because we're playing for Canada. So he was one of the great ones. But while I was going on to get ready for this, Pete, I found a picture of Gouche's mom, Shirley, Mama Gouche. I found a picture of me and her when I went to see her in the facility she was in. A beautiful place. And one day she found the Toronto Maple Leaf sweater. I think it was a Frank Mahovlich sweater, and we posed for it. And I sent Gouche the sweater. The picture. Hopefully, he'll show it. But yeah, we didn't get a chance to talk after that. After last Wednesday, Pete.
Yeah, it was really what I wanted to follow up with you on, and what Gouche has a copy of is we've been creating these infographics that are really about helping people stay connected over the holidays and giving them tips, tools, and ideas that, whether it's for their own health or for the health of somebody else, we can all make a difference by getting connected. There's a post that we had today. That's a study out of the United States showing as we head into the holidays, a lot of people are concerned about their family members and not getting the opportunity to get connected. Yeah. And frankly, when we ask people to self-identify, I bet you the numbers are probably higher than that. Whether it's a young person who's been disconnected, working at home remotely, or if it's a senior, or frankly, this is the powerful thing about the pandemic is nobody is escaping this pandemic without some type of challenge. So you could be a business owner who's struggling to keep your business afloat. You could have lost your job. You might have financial pressure. This isn't a seniors thing or a young person thing. This is an everybody's thing. And what we need to recognize is we are all in this together. Yeah,
absolutely. I had a chance this afternoon at noon to hook up with Steve Morris, who we've had on Mental Health Mondays, and we talked for almost an hour. And he's going to help me get through some personal things I'm going through right now. So we all are grateful to Mental Health Mondays and Wellness Wednesdays.
Hey, listen, getting into it, Mike. Steven's going to be part of the Stop Concussion and Connected now. Paul, with you, of course. I spoke to him this morning myself on another issue for a young boy that's suffering, and he has come on board with us. So that's just fantastic news to have a guy like that, Paul, as you've spoken to him. Classic guy. He's going to help us tremendously. And listen, having Mike Futa on, it's a tough act to follow, Pete Bombachi, but if anybody can do it, it's certainly you. I want to show you a great...
before you show that, I just want to say, I didn't know Mike before, but honestly, listening to that interview, what a guy. Energy, passion, caring, concerning, great stories. What a memory. And I just love the fact that even through all that, and we'll touch on again, connection, because that's what we're about. But when he talked about what he's doing now, and it's focusing about spending time with his girls, and number two, about helping other people, and what kind of a thrill he gets out of doing that. And Gouche, big shout out to you and to Rosie. You are always available to help young people, helping people that are dealing with concussions. And again, as we go through this challenging time, we can think about helping our friends who might be struggling with, work or jobs or financial or whatever, but it could be a concussion from, something else. We all have an opportunity right now to make a difference in the world. And I just kudos to you, to Mike for using his name and his stature to do good out there, because if every one of us does that type of stuff, we will make the world, and we'll get through this, but we'll get through it much better when we do it together.
Now, I've never had children, as you guys know, but I just want to read this from our buddy, Paul.
Well, hold on. No children that you know of.
Well, I do get Father's Day called Gouche somewhere in Canada, but coming from Germany. Thank you, Paul, for reminding me of that. Sam Trapolino had an issue with his eye last night, had to be raced to the hospital. It sounded very, very serious, and he listened to the show from his hospital bed. Wow, Mike Futa, very easy to listen to, just what you said, Pete. He's being charged going back home so they can remove my eye to get, what? I'm being discharged and then have to go back tomorrow because they're removing his eye to get to a lump of mass. Ooh, okay, sorry about that. We'll have to find out how serious. That sounds serious. I don't know.
No, yeah.
Sorry about that. I didn't have my glasses on properly. So we'll find
I hope they're not removing his eye.
He's doing okay.
Not sound good at all.
I'm sorry I'm smiling because that sounds pretty serious.
Pete, to lighten up the mood really quick, how easy did that Bumbachi stash come off?
Well, I got to be honest, Rosie. Now I've actually gone and invested after my time at Movember. Invested in some of the finest razor supplies possible, so it was pretty easy. And even as Mike Futa was talking about George Peros there.
Yes,
George was. I'm pretty sure George did shave off his stash when he was in Montreal. We went up to Montreal. We had a shave off in the basement of the, what is it? It's not the Forum. It's the Bell Center.
Right.
And he is another one of those absolutely fabulous guys who is willing to stand up, do the right thing, help people out. I know he's a big family guy. And it's just so amazing when you see the hockey community and there's story after story after story of the people that stand up and do good in this world.
Yeah.
And it just, again, you guys are great examples of it. I'm just happy to be connected to you guys. And it's just a beautiful thing to see.
Paul?
Yeah, I don't know if you ever watched the show Hockey Wives, but it was one of my favorites. And Peros's wife was one of the best wives on it. Who was the guy that came to Australia?
David Booth. David Booth. They did it was a whole show on us.
Yeah, his wife was amazing. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Hey, listen, the reason why I brought it, hey, Pete, here, Pete, these guys are givers and takers. Thank you. But here's his answer to the eye. Ha, ha, ha. No, they'll put it back. Well, if they take your eye, can you actually take your eye out? Like, hang on a sec here. I'm a little worried about that guy. I think he's been nipping. Hey, listen, the reason why I brought it up about Mike Futa, I watch him on Facebook. Unbelievable how he treats his parents. We should all be proud. Paul knows it too. I'm very similar in that I took care of my mom like nobody could. And look at this great picture. And this is why I brought it up. And on top of that, I was saying that I didn't have children. The reason I was saying that, watching Mike Futa with his daughters as he's divorced, the way he treats his daughters is just something that if I had children, I would love to have been a father like him because he is just over the top. So thank you, Paul. What a great memory. What a great memory.
That was is that a Frank Mahovlich jersey that she had, Gouche?
Yeah, Jesus, it's a little bit teary-eyed there for a sec. Yeah, my mom was pea and vinegar, Paul, Pete. Yeah. You've never met a woman that, 5'2". She was more my dad than my dad, and I love my dad dearly. She was just a firecracker.
So show that picture one more time, Gucci. Yeah, so she was the best, man. I'd go to visit her, and oh my God, she wanted to find that sweater. I got to take a picture, and we found the sweater, and yeah, if she liked you, you were good, man.
Oh yeah.
But if you bothered her, you said the wrong thing, you were in serious trouble, my friend.
And you could not say anything bad about Gouche. You could not. She'd keep telling people, that Gretzky, he had nothing on Carey. Okay, thanks, Mom. Anyways, and the big deal is that like she fell in love with Dustin Byfuglien. Like that was her player because of Winnipeg Jets connection. And while she was watching the playoffs, my buddy, I flew out to watch one of the playoff games, and he had told that to the Winnipeg Jets. The Winnipeg Jets sent her a jersey of Dustin Byfuglien. And you know what, Paul? I can't find it. I'm looking for it. But that's how much she was just one of those people. Anyways, the reason why I want to tell you that story is that men, please pick up the phone right now if your mother's living, give her a shout, and just tell her how much you love her, please. Because I can tell you right now, I would give anything to do that. All right, that's enough of that. Go to.
I couldn't agree more. And I have lost both my parents, and there's nothing more powerful than the love of parents. And I think the other important message in this whole thing is just in multi-generational relationships. You know, too often, especially during the pandemic, we're not getting a chance to spend that quality time with our grandparents or with our kids' grandparents, or just with seniors that might be all around us, and the opportunity we all have to reach out. And it can just be as simple as a hello. It can be as simple as dropping off a note. You know, these are all simple things that we can do to help make the difference in somebody else's day. Paul, this is what came from our conversation last week. And it really was, you know, a lot of our infographics to this point have been focused on connecting with people, you know, young people. What can they do? Who can we help? And we thought about, you know, seniors, and we thought about people in poverty with food insecurity. And this one was really focused on people that were struggling, addiction, certainly mental health issues, physical health issues. We got loneliness, and then chronic illness. I have rheumatoid arthritis, so I know the chronic illness game, which can change day to day, waking up and sometimes feeling like you don't feel like getting up. But Paul, that is really that is an infographic inspired by you, by our conversation last week, and under the suicide or under the addiction one, it really is about Johan Hari saying that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. It is about human connection. And you talked about that, and we talked about it a little bit last week.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sorry, Paul. Comment. Sorry, Paul.
No, I just thank you. You know, it's these Mondays and Wednesdays mean the world to me. You learn so much when you reach out.
Well, yeah, it's clear. The research is there. It validates it. And again, our focus is always on preventative, but the reality is it doesn't matter whether it's prevention, if you're in the crisis or beyond the crisis in recovery, spending time with other people keeps you out of your own head. And that's, I think you talked about your girlfriend last week, Paul, and how important of a role she played in your life. And I think it's critical for us to continue to share these stories so people recognize, wow, I didn't realize something as simple as a conversation could make the difference.
Absolutely. And that's why we promote today. As soon as we get off the show, let's call somebody we haven't spoken to for a while. Listen, I just want to go through these again. I loved it. First and foremost, I was not on when, 41% of adults reported they worry about. I worry. And I'm worried for my wife and her father's situation, and her sister, who is very, very ill with a very debilitating illness with Parkinson's. I even now, before the holidays are on, and now that we're in lockup, she's constantly concerned. And I'm watching her, dreadedly phone the father and not being able to go over there, and apologizing that she can't go over there. But we know we can't, because of the COVID situation. So what a unbelievable posting. But here, those battling with addiction, Paul, you understand it more than anyone. I understand it through my sister's eyes. Someone struggling with mental health issues, not necessarily because you're dealing with mental health issues, are you addicted? So sometimes a lot of people automatically think if you're dealing with mental health issues, you have issues with addiction, whether it be alcohol, drugs, or any others. That's not true. Someone struggling with their physical health. Right now, you talked about rheumatoid arthritis. I'm dealing with some of that. My joints are hurting. Every time I wake up in the morning, it's tough. I got to pull myself together just to go to the Friday skate, which Pete is going to make the showing, Rosie, 1:15 at Paramount. My body doesn't work. I'm almost embarrassed and you can say it yourself, Paul. We have to realize we are older, but I can understand why some of these. I've always asked, why doesn't Paul Henderson skate anymore? The reason is, guys, is that you can't do. I don't look anything to what I was when I played. And when people read, you actually played the game. You know what I mean? So I think it's important. There's a mental side to it. And then this one's great. those that are struggling with loneliness and those with chronic illness. I would say the one that's really hurting right now is that one there, Pete. And I'd like to hear both of your comments on it, dealing with loneliness. I'm blessed. I've got so many friends I can pick the phone up. I've got a wife that's absolutely phenomenal. I've got you guys in my life I know I can call. Loneliness has got to be worse sometimes than an illness.
Yeah, I think that's critical. I think you hit the nail on the head. When I talked to Stephen today, we talked about different things, and we talked about the fact that sometimes, you think that person is okay because they have so many people, but sometimes, just because it looks like that person has a lot of people in their life, they could be extremely lonely. They're not letting them in. So I think it's absolutely critical that you reach out and you keep reaching and don't take no for an answer, because as Stephen said to me this morning, as we're setting up a plan for me to move forward, is if I just continually say to the people that call me, yeah, I'm okay, I'm playing the game, and it's a scary game, Pete.
Yeah, Rosie, I couldn't agree with you more. A lot of times the people that appear to be the strongest or the most social or the funniest can often be the people that might be struggling the most behind that facade that they put on. And so, checking in on all of our friends and all the people we know. And that's, we, the Gen Well Project, we call out friends, family, neighbors, and colleagues, because those are the people that you're either physically connected to or emotionally connected to. So we have a reason. And especially during COVID-19, we all have a reason to reach out and just say, hey, Rosie, how you doing? What's going on in your world? The other thing I wanted to talk about is I think the interesting thing, and Carrie mentioned there at the start of it, the loneliness numbers actually didn't go up, which is really interesting. And really what was happening is that because we were all going through this together, and in times of crisis, we as a human species are really good. We all reached out. We checked in on people because we didn't know what to do, and because we were all going through it together. But my question will be, and it'll be interesting to see what the research shows over the coming days, weeks, months, is first 2-3 weeks, everybody dug down deep. We were caring, we were sharing, we were doing what we could to help everybody get through. But now we're 8 months, 9 months in, and now we've got other challenges, financial, jobs. We've got actually, I read an article yesterday out of the New York Times just saying that what we're really missing is our routine. I think you even touched on it, even with Mike, I think, which is the fact that we are out of our routine gives us all that uneasiness. We go to the coffee shop at the same time every day to give us a routine. We go to the office. We had all these things in our lives that were our routine, and all of them are gone. And when you have those routines, but then 2 or 3 things go a little offside or different, you can handle them. But when everything in your life is kind of spur of the moment, that's what creates a lot of anxiety. Even coming on here with you guys on Wednesdays, and I'm sure for you two every day to know you're going to do the show, it feels good because you got something to focus on. You know that something's in the calendar. And for everybody, just recognizing that anxiety around not having that routine can be part of the challenge that we're all facing.
It's funny you say that really quick, Pete, about routine, because that was one of the first things that Steve and I talked about when we talked today, is setting up a program for me as we move forward. And he said one of the hardest things right now for addicts in recovery slipping into relapse is routine. They've got out of that routine. And instead of normally getting up at 8 o'clock, well, tomorrow they got up at 10 and then 11. And then they got up at 7:45, but then looked at the watch and said, I don't really have anything, forget about it. And that getting out of that routine slipped them back into that negative thought pattern.
But if I could add, and that's very interesting that you're talking about that, because Paul knows me very well. I've never been a routine type of guy. So once I got out of hockey, I'm really sporadic. I'm all over the map, and people sometimes call it disorganized. I'm not. I'm very organized, disorganized.
But Gouche, one time, you're always busy. Like, I've known you almost 15 years. You're always busy. I've never known Gouche to be laying in bed at 11 in the morning and just doing nothing. Right?
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to. No, you're absolutely right. And I don't. It's this what I live right now, as I did when I played hockey, as you did too, Paul. I got paid to play a game, so I don't. I don't classify anything that I do work. It's not work for me, and it blends in. And some psychiatrists may say, you've got to have that distinction. I found in my own way to deal with how I feel and how to deal with it. So my point to it was, I didn't have routine going in this. So I don't think I was as, listen, we all have the ups and downs. I've had my real bad days, but I've got more good days right now than I have even close to bad days. And that's only because this out of routine is my life. So I would say to you both, Pete and Rosie, I could understand somebody that you just said, go to get your coffee, do this, do that. I'm struggling now more than ever. I got to drive Tony to work because we only have one car. She gets me up at 7:30. I just went to bed at 4 because I was watching TV and sports. And now I got to drive her to work. And I know now I've been set into a routine. I'm having more anxiety about that than I did when it was all kind of unroutine. Comment on that, Pete. I'd like to hear you.
And I appreciate you asking, because I really do think that there's something really important for us to hear right now. Is that there are going to be a lot of transitions in the work world that people weren't prepared for. So whether you lost your job or whether you're now working remotely, but you've never had to work remotely before, I think, Gouche, for you and I, to me, I've been working at home for 4 years now. And even though I hate it, I much prefer being with people. I love going to an office. I love having that community type gathering. But because we've been doing it for 4 years, we've probably created some of the structure in how we stay connected, how we build those connections. You talked about that long list of people on your phone that you can call. But we need to recognize that some people have been forced into this, that were never planning on this. And that adjustment for people is going to take time. And it's a psychological adjustment more than anything. It's actually, first and foremost, recognizing that it's not going to be routine like it has been your entire career. But secondly, and back to your point, Paul, it's okay. So now what? What am I going to do to start putting some structure? How am I going to create those occasions throughout the course of the day that I pick up the phone and call a friend, or I go for a walk and have a chat with a buddy or something? Once we can get those habits in place, the problem is nobody really knows what's happening yet. So you can't even start to put those processes in place.
You're right.
Because we're struggling to figure out when's the end. Is it January? Because I've heard January, I've heard May, I've heard September. So if you knew
I bank on the September one. Yeah, I would bank on the September one. Yeah. Listen, what I wanted to add to that, and Paul, I'll let you comment right after this one. One of the things, because I was thinking through all this, why, you know what? I know this may sound corny, but I've got a chance to spend a lot of time with my best friend, right? I've got more time to spend with my wife, who you guys know it, and I enjoy it. I you know what? She's always saying, Gooch, why don't you go out and spend time with the boys and that? And you know what? I've done that all my life, and I think probably for you too, Pete. And now with yourself being around your father, Paul, those opportunities will dissipate. You may lose your father. Tony is back at work and I'm going to have to fly to Australia. There's going to be all those opportunities that are going to take away from it. Suck it up right now. And you've mentioned that you've lost your parents, Pete. Paul has lost his mother. Take every minute and treasure it. Treasure it while they're on this earth, because you will be thinking back saying, why didn't I do that?
Yeah,
Yes.
You're 100% right. And it's like anything else in life. We don't realize what we have until it's gone. And then when it's gone, then you realize you can't get it back.
Almost a cliche, but so true. Hey, listen, Sharon Trapolino's coming in. We were trying to come up with a no idea type joke for Sam. Sam Trapolino's part of the Stop Concussions Australia. He called me late night, Pete. I think I mentioned it to you, and he's laid up in a hospital, and he is going to hopefully get his eye back. Comment from Robert Wine, one of our favorites. I agree with Pete about this show. I know that if things aren't the best, that at 4 I can turn this on and start laughing. That's what it should say there. Thank you for the compliment, Pete. Talk to us a little bit more about all these great posters you're putting up for people to have an opportunity to we got to take some time out. Obviously, and with the internet, it's very easy to get lost in it. But some of the postings you got are just classics, and it really brings us back to what humans are all about. Without human connection, we're nothing.
Yeah, as we like to say, human connection transcends every illness, every cause, every issue. It doesn't matter what you're struggling with today. If you struggle with other people around you, that you can chat it out, find solutions, and build resilience, that's the way we all get to the other side. I don't care if it's poverty, food insecurity, addiction, mental health crisis, physical health crisis. And the thing we need to understand is, anything that throws us out of the routine that we were just chatting about. So a kid breaks his arm and he can't play hockey with his teammates during non-COVID time. That's going to create some challenges for that young man or woman. So, the important thing is to recognize this isn't just the person who's pounding away on his computer down in his basement, or the senior who's locked up in a senior's residence. It's everybody who can be affected by this. The disconnection that happens, whether we're spending too much time on tech, whether we're spending too much time at the office or too much time alone, it can affect us all. And our infographics that we really created in the lead up to the holidays, we've got 8 of them now. We've tried to help people see one of 2 things: either the benefit of connecting for yourself and all the ways in which you can do that, simple ways that you can do that, or number 2, thinking about who else can you help. Because if half of the country actually takes the one step, as we talked about last week, and calls one more person, the theme of our campaign was just one more, call one more person today, we can truly, make the world a happier and healthier place, because we're all reaching out and helping people get through this challenging time.
Yeah.
Question, Paul.
Yeah. Pete, do you find people doing it? Like, we're doing it and it means a lot, but in your day-to-day, your travels, you're watching things, reading up on things, are people listening?
It is a great question, Paul. We've been doing this for 4 years, trying to raise the collective consciousness about the importance of human connection. And as I say to people, that up until 8 months ago, most people wouldn't have taken the time to actually listen because they were so busy rushing from meeting to meeting.
True.
Now we're in the middle of a pandemic and they're waking up going, wow, I really feel lonely and disconnected. And so I think people are now becoming a little more aware of how important human connection is in their lives. But where we are, it's the analogy I will use is participation, which came out in 1971 based on a piece of research. It was in 1969 saying that Canadians had become apathetic and lazy and, didn't care about their health. And so what transpired was participation was launched in order to educate people about how important physical activity was for their health. And they focused on what were all the positives. Well, where I would say we are now, Paul, is that we are in that early phase of actually educating people, because none of us were ever educated on this information. And most of it's only come out in the last 10 years. So most of us, even teachers, even HR leaders in businesses, some of the health professionals don't even understand how important it is. As I mentioned last week, I think 2 studies came out in the last 2 months. Studies came out saying the single greatest thing we can do to prevent depression is social connection, and that isolation and loneliness is linked to type 2 diabetes. Well, not everybody's, working through the research pages every day to keep up to date on stuff. And that's why the GenWell Project exists, so that we can, through platforms like this. And again, thank you guys. The opportunity to come in here every Wednesday and reinforce for people how important human connection is as part of a healthy lifestyle. Yes, you should eat well. Yes, you should go for exercise, spend time in nature, do all those things that we've heard about for 50 years. But I'm telling you right now, the research is clearer than ever before that spending time with other people is as important and probably more important than any of the other things we've ever been educated on.
You are watching Gouche Live featuring Paul Rosen, brought to you by the good people at the Hockey News and, of course, Sports Illustrated. It's Wellness Wednesday.
Yeah, and Paramount Sports Management. And so did I hear this correctly, Peter? You're coming out on Friday?
I am finally going to strap the blades back on, and it's really, to be honest with you, I've missed 2 of the other invites only because the schedule was too busy. Because I can tell you there's 2 things. Number 1, I'm so excited to get back on the ice. But number 2, I wanted to do it with you guys because I know it'll be a slower pace with you 2. But number 2, is I don't want to go back into a game, like, because I did
No,
that
it's not
already earlier, and I pulled, something off I pulled a tendon off of my heel. It's like, I am not interested in. It's what you said earlier, the physical health issues that are about to come. There's a reason why Paul Henderson doesn't play, because he's not dumb enough to jump back into games and try and play full tilt.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, I'm not that smart, so I need to go out and just skate around and have a laugh.
Well, we're gonna have a blast.
This is just fun, pure fun, nothing but fun.
You got it. All right. Final word to you, Pete.
Hey, thanks again for the opportunity. Look forward to Friday, and most importantly to everybody, reach out to Just One More today, and let's all make a difference in the world.
Paul?
Absolutely, 100%. Looking forward to having the Boombachi bomb come at my glove.
I'm just looking forward to the video.
Yeah. No video. No,
oh, yeah.
No audio or video devices allowed.
Hey, listen, guys, what a great show. We had Pete Bombacci. Sorry, we were a little delayed. I got an opportunity to get Mike Futa at the last minute, having that guy on. I'll tell you what, he was amazing. Look forward to getting him on and talking more stories with our good friend, James Richmond. Paul, classic. The one thing about it all, and it's great that we can chum around and joke around, and we'll be having some cut-ups next Wednesday, no question, Pete. But to hear the stories that you just never get to hear about. You get to hear a lot of the NHL stories about guys playing and all that sort of stuff. But to listen to Mike's talk about what it meant to him to watch the players that he helped develop win a Stanley Cup, it was like a proud father.
Yeah. And to win the 86,000 tax-free at the junior game and not having to give it up to his ex-wife.
Pete, did you hear that story?
I did. Well, I heard both those stories, but I think the ex-wife thing was entertaining. But actually, I always look for those purpose ones, and I think that that comment just about the pride he must feel in actually seeing those kids that he's mentored all the way along actually get to a point where they've actually won the cup. There can't be anything more inspiring to listen to and to actually see somebody be a part of.
Ladies and gentlemen, Pete Bombacci, the GenWell Project. Make sure you check it out. All the infographics are there. They are phenomenal. Take time out and read through them. Okay, Pete, we'll see you on Friday for the game. See you next Wednesday for Wellness Wednesday. And Rosie, I will see you tomorrow right here on Gouche Live featuring Paul Rosen.
See you, boys.
Right.
Let's play some hockey.